Good morning, good morning, good morning to everybody. Another wonderful morning here in the UK, but we still got wrestling, so I can't complain too much. But I'm really happy to bring on my guest today. None other than Mr. Max Green. He's the ambassador for the National Autistic Society, as well as everything else. Max, I mean, I couldn't fit everything on there, I'm afraid, but this is just one of your amazing qualities that you do as a speaker. And I know you're here, there, and everywhere. And in these times of course, mainly lockdowns, it's all unfortunately I can't meet you in person. I would have loved to have done this in front of you, but everything's virtual, and I'm sure that's playing a part in what you do as well with your speaking on all these platforms. But how are you, buddy?
Yeah, all good. No, I think absolutely, it's kind of the way that it's changed. I done a series on YouTube last year called the Autism Connections, where I just interviewed people with autism, people without autism, just to see their stories and their knowledge of it. And obviously, of course, I would have loved to have met all of those people in person, but where the pandemic is just still still going on,
Yeah,
it,
of course.
but I think this is the kind of the way now, isn't it? Of it's going to come to the point where people are going to be like, oh, do you want to do an interview? And you're just going to be like, oh, what, online? You'll be like, well, yeah. So no, but thank you for obviously spending the time to want to do this as well.
Yeah. No. My pleasure, my friend. As I said to you off camera, obviously I've worked in the health and social care sector for the last 20 years or so. I have a sister who's got epilepsy and autism as well, and so I'm very much devoted to it. But I know that you're a wrestling fan as well. I saw you on Wrestling Travel at the back end of last year, where of course you was awarded as well at that time. But for those people that are not familiar with you, Max, just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, my friend.
Yeah, so as you say, amongst like kind of the things that I have done, I'm an actor. I'm a public speaker. I've produced a film before as well, but a lot of the
Wow.
work I actually do is around autism. So, whether that's speaking at the Houses of Parliament all the way to speaking at universities, schools, um, you name it. I've probably spoke there, sort of thing. So, and it's all just about raising the understanding of autism. I work mainly with the kind of employment sector because at the moment there's only 16% of people with autism in full-time work. I mean,
Hmm.
that's not changed for 10 years. But alongside the autism work I do, I've also got autism, OCD, ADHD, and epilepsy in real life. So for me, it's a kind of trying to raise not only awareness to one, but also trying to raise the awareness to the other conditions as well. Um, and a lot of the roles I've played on television have been around that sort of autistic character, and every character I like to try and portray differently because, as we all know, once you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism, and people have a
Hmm.
perception of what autism is. And actually, you might meet someone and actually go, "Oh my god!" They're totally different to what I envisioned, autism to be.
Mm.
Um, so it does. It really varies, and it's obviously just so nice to be able to do it. As you say, I won the coronavirus and autism leader of the year for Dimensions um, last year, and now they've also asked me to be on like their panel of experts. So yeah, that's again a just huge honour to be the ambassador for the National Autistic Society and now be on a panel. It's like, gosh, you'd never expect this sort of like
Hmm.
10 years ago when I was in school. So yeah, so that's kind of the stuff that I do really. Just trying to raise the profile and the awareness of autism.
Yeah, I mean, mate, just listening to you there, honestly, my hat's off to you because it's not an easy thing, like even what we're doing now. Like I know I work with a few people that have come on to the shows, and I know how difficult it is as well. I mean, it's this kind of thing is difficult for just kind of quote unquote ordinary people, but much less when you've got autism. You've got a lot of strains and you've got a lot more pressures with it's like 10 times ramped up. But there's some amazing people out there. I'm really glad that the wrestling community that I know have kind of branched out and tried to lend a hand to a lot of these content creators that may find it more difficult than others just because of the whole social barrier type dynamic to it. But they're doing an amazing job. One thing I want to ask you, Max, and just a personal question, if anything, but you was talking about how different things have come in the last 10 years. What sort of progress have you seen? I mean, has there been a decent level of progress that you've seen in terms of awareness, or is it still very much like you feel like you're kind of batting against the water coming in, the waves are coming at you a bit? How has that been?
That's a good question. I would say there's a lot of awareness for autism than probably what there was 10 years ago. What still isn't as high as what we would want is the understanding. People sort of go, "Oh, autism," and I've heard about that film Rain Man, and then they just kind of leave it. And a lot of people are like, "No, it's a lot more than that." You look at, say, 10 years ago. So we're looking at 2011. We're talking 2 years just after the Autism Act came in, so in 2009. And I mean, the employment rate has been the same. So in the last 10 years, the employment rate is still at 16%. It's not gone any higher. Exclusions from schools are at the highest. People with autism are 4 times more likely to feel lonelier than somebody who without the condition, and 9 times more likely to have thoughts of committing suicide. So you sort of look at statistics like that, and you sort of look 10 years ago, and you're kind of surprised to see actually the statistics are very still the same. I think there's a number of reasons. Again, I think more people are aware of it and more people want to understand it. But it's tricky. I think for people to understand, because you just see somebody, and because it's an invisible condition, you just think, nothing, quote unquote, well, that's another kind of language you use, nothing wrong with them, when really it's like,
yeah.
People need to understand the condition a bit more.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's been more progress in terms of awareness, but possibly not understanding, especially with employers and schools, just because schools seem to still have the same way of sort of teaching. And I mean, just in general, like we still learn about Henry VIII, but no one teaches us how to read a payslip or how to write a CV sort of thing.
Right. Yeah. Getcha.
So, and employment, I've been in employment situations where I've asked if I can wear headphones because it helps block out the kind of the sensory overload. And, I've had a manager turn around and go, "Well, no." And I've said, "Well, there's people that do it here all the time." And her response was, "Yeah, but they've been here 7 years. You've been here, you're in probation." So, and it's like, well, I think I said it on an interview the other day. It's okay for Dave to listen to Radiohead sort of thing. But I can't block out the sensory overload that's going to help me do my job better. It's just things like you think, come on. But it's a forever kind of progress. And I hope the next 10 years we've hammered the awareness. So hopefully in the next 10 years we can get the understanding a bit more down as well.
Couple of points that you mentioned are really good, and I'm glad that I mean, I've got to say, first and foremost, mate, you're a really good speaker. Like how you deliver stuff, you're excellent. You're excellent. You're very thorough. I'm a kind of a train wreck when I do this half the time. I always forget about things I need to say and everything else. But a couple of the points you mentioned that I want to pick up on is you talk about that kind of awareness that people have maybe through films or television, and you're 100% right. Like when I was working in care, and I would interview somebody for a job, and I'd say, like, what sort of things have you seen anybody with autism? They'd always bring up the film Rain Man, and I was like, it's good, but it's kind of like a very small, and it's out of control side of things. Like, it's not quite real perception. Yeah, it's one part of it, but I mean, autism in general is such a complex thing. You're never going to get two people completely the same. Sensory stimulations, everything else, it's completely different. So I feel like in recent times, I mean, I can't remember the last, I suppose there's been better things out there that have actually given a better perception of what autism is. But one of the best things I ever did was a training, where it was kind of like they would put these headsets on us. They would have these specialized glasses. It's like a PlayStation VR basically, and all these noises were just ramped up. I suppose the only thing I can relate it to is if anyone's seen the film Man of Steel, where there's a part in it where I think I don't know if the villain is. I think it's I can't remember his name, but he pulls off the mask and then all the sensory starts to hit, and he can hear noises coming out of nowhere, and just little things that you don't really think of. Pay such a huge impact to people. And again, even with noise, everybody seems to think, oh, it's crowds and noise, and it's not quite like that. My sister, for instance, she could have the telly up at full blast. However, a little thing like a plane coming across, she'll hear that over anything else. Or maybe unexpected noises like the letterbox, stuff like that. That will trigger her more as an impact than maybe the TV. Or I think everyone thinks it's volume, and it's not quite volume. It's like the small little things coming out of nowhere for sensory. But like I was saying, with this training that we did, it was probably one of the best impactful moments to have on me, to just kind of realize how difficult it can be going into a busy place where you've got all these crazy noises coming out of nowhere. I've only seen a video, I think it was a training video, that kind of touched on it, but again, unless you've got the full range with hearing, visual, you're not really going to get that impact. Have you seen anything better out there in regards to that, for like people to get a better idea of some of that sensory understanding?
I'll tell you what, just obviously, not just because I'm an ambassador as well, but I mean, this kind of blew my mind away. When I started doing the campaign for the National Autistic Society, they've got a video on there about a young boy in a shop named Alex, and it's so good. There's a virtual one online, so you kind of look around like you're Alex in the shop,
right?
And then there's just a normal, like kind of cinematography one, of following Alex as he's going through the shop, and that is really, really good. Again, it heightens that sort of those, as you were speaking, it's like someone drops some change, and it's not so much the crowd he hears, it's the drop of the change and how loud it is, and how it's really good. There's also another one where they kind of show you how people can be overloaded with just information. And there's a guy just sat at his desk, and he's like, ready, and he's got 60 seconds, and he just asks you questions. And the whole point of it is you to see how many questions you can ask, but then all the questions start getting mixed within each other. So it's that processing. And obviously the one that I done, I say the one that I done, with the employment campaign, just followed Stephen, who was going to job interviews, and how, simplest thing like the telephone ringing in the back can really kind of disturb him in an interview and really throw him off his game, through that interview process. I mean, just a question for you, John, as well.
Go on, man.
Does your sister at all use subtitles at all, or anything like that when she watches shows?
Occasionally, yeah. I mean, it depends what it is. She's not a fantastic reader, but she's not bad at some things. But often, I think sometimes she just likes to have that noise as a kind of reassurance. It's not that maybe she's even engaged in what's on the telly. It's just like a kind of comfort thing, that it's kind of like she knows that's going to be on. There's like a schedule of programs, and she's got not much comprehension of time either. So for her, time is kind of goes by the schedule of the telly, and she kind of works that out of her day. So Yeah, I suppose in sometimes she would, but in most cases she's got it on just for that reassurance, that comfort that nothing else is going to come out of the blue, basically.
I mean, literally, I think every show I watch, I have to have subtitles on because I
Right.
just can't process what's going on
Hmm.
massively without them. And it's hard to explain that to people because they're like, well, you can hear it. And you're like, yeah, but sometimes you might think someone says something and then they don't. And then, I just end up getting confused with it. So subtitles always watch
Yep.
um, because it just helps me. And things like, again, I would say throughout life I've learned how to sort of manage some of the things that go on. But it's just simple things like even telling the time on a clock.
Hmm.
It take me longer because I literally have to just process it, and I think that's hard for people to sort of understand. Even me, I think to
Hmm.
myself, I'm 23 years old, soon to be 24, and I look at the clock and I go, why can't I read it? And I can. It's just that it probably takes me 5 seconds longer, you know,
Hmm.
to process it. And it's just it can be simple things like that that actually could throw someone off what they're doing. It could
Hmm.
just really kind of ruin their day. To the you've only got to look at the clock and you're say 5 minutes late for an appointment, and then that throws your whole routine. That throws the whole day off
Yeah.
course. So it's just things like that, as you say, it can really throw you off. And it's just being about mindful like that. It's one of the things I've always experienced is when I go to a job interview, I'd love one thing that employers could do. This is really good advice for employers is just send an autistic person a photo of the building. You
Hmm.
know, uh, is there going to be car parking? Because there's so many places I've gone to, and I get there and it's like, okay, there's no parking. Okay, where's the building? And you
Yeah.
just panic.
Hmm.
Uh, so it's just simple adjustments, simple reasonable adjustments that can actually make it so worthwhile. And actually,
Yeah.
you can start, having an autistic person in the workplace that is really talented, that just might need that little bit of support. Um, but they've got everything to offer, just as what anyone else has. It's just employers sadly think it's going to take too much work, too much time, and actually no, that person could actually make you the money. That person could bring all the orders in just on the basis of their personality and what they got to offer. So
Yeah. No, it's interesting about you talking about employers, because obviously I worked in the care sector, and occasionally we may have somebody who may interview um, with sort of mild autism that wants to come in and do care, and you think, well, that's great because we get their knowledge as well as them working with maybe a lot less abled people, and you think that'll be a really good insight, like they'll be able to give us that. But you'd be surprised, I mean, the amount of employers where they don't have those things regular available, like for instance, like you saying about putting a picture out of what the place looks like, because like you say, once you go to an interview and you're already, I mean, anyone going for an interview in general is nervous most times, unless you're super happy or whatever not to get it, but you're nervous naturally. But one thing spirals out to another thing, to another thing, to another thing. So if there's like, you get there, you can't find it, that's going to add stress to you already. By the time you get in there and you're sitting down, you're already like in a fluster, in a panic, and you're like, there are simplistic things that wouldn't take a lot of adapting or modifying that they could do. And I think the other thing to it as well is that acceptance as well from people. I've had it before. You'd be surprised. Even some like carers, quote unquote carers, they're sometimes we had people turn up and they'd be like, well, should they be working here? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, come on, what the hell? Like, what? Of course they should. If you can do the job, you can do the job. There should be no issues with that at all in my mind. But it was very much like there was this whole thing is, oh, they might be slightly different, they might be awkward. Like, I'm thinking to myself, like realistically and honest, you're awkward. You know, these people that are telling me this are always awkward. And I've got to be honest with you, staff in general, like when you work with a lot of people around you, no matter where, you're always going to get people you like and people you don't. It's called natural. It's just natural. So you can't have it every way. But as soon as that label, I think that label with, you know, with any kind of disability, not just autism, but any disability, I really think it hinders them a lot. And because it's something you might have to put down on an application form, oh yes, I've got autism, automatically people just look at that and think, oh well, you know, there might be an issue there, or we might have to. And I kind of feel it's really like there is, if I'm going for an interview, yeah, I might have things that people might not like about me, but I haven't got to put that down on an application, if that makes sense. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's a discredit sometimes to people that are going for these interviews. And I'm sure one of the reasons that, you know, there's not enough opportunities. Max, I do want to ask you another thing as well about employment, because it's something when I was supporting people and they were looking for jobs, a lot of the times, and it probably still happens today, I would imagine, because I've only left it in the last year, but a lot of the times, a lot of the people I knew, they used to go to colleges, and you know, I think they're fine up to a certain point. And then I remember there was one guy, he was like, I don't know, almost in his 50s. And he'd been doing the same lesson, maths, for like, you know, all those years since he'd left school. I said to him, I said, like, you know, did you ever get bored of this? And he said to me, realistically, the only reason I come here is so I can socialize with my friends. And I
Mm.
think that's what it was. I don't think it's that he was interested in maths to that point where he felt like, oh, you know, I'm a 50-year-old man and I still need to go to this lesson. Do you feel like sometimes there's enough meaningful things for people to be doing? Like, i.e., one person I supported, he had a job offer, but it was like in I think it was a charity shop, and it was just for the most part be folding clothes, putting them back, and then that was it. They didn't get paid. It was a voluntary thing as well. Do you think some? But the thing that got me is I knew this person that was doing it didn't find that job meaningful. They liked it for a little while, and then they were like, well, do I need to be here, or could I be doing something I enjoy? You know, and I had to kind of think about it in through their eyes. Like maybe I'd feel the same. What about for you there, Max? Like, have you seen sometimes like meaningful stuff isn't out there enough for people with disabilities?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You know, I think it's important that we always have obviously high expectations of our young people, you know, because I think the minute us as educators or teachers set that kind of bar a bit low, um, we're automatically sort of subconsciously doing them a disservice because you know these people are capable, and you know you only got to get them you only got to get them the right job and there's something that they're really interested in, and you know they're away, you know. So absolutely, you know, I my first kind of work experience was in a cafe, and I hated
Right.
it, couldn't stand it. Um, and it was because I was useless at it. Don't get me wrong, the team around me were brilliant, lovely, lovely people, but I was just useless at the job. And I said to myself, you know, I don't want to be working in a cafe. Um, you know, not because there's anything wrong with that, but it just wasn't for me. And for some people that would be like, oh, you know, I love it. You know, I've worked here 50 years, sort of thing, and I wouldn't want to do anything else. But for me, I wanted, you know, to do something else, and it was incredibly hard because my school didn't do GCSEs because it was a SEND school. So I left school with no GCSEs. I went to college, and I just luckily got into the course that I wanted. I think, you know, I explained my situation, and they gave me that opportunity to say, actually, normally you'd have to do a foundation course just to get the grades that you want to get into the course you want to do, and they said we ain't going to do that because it's not fair. So you can come into the course. I'd done my course there. I liked it. You know, college wasn't for me. You know, the whole kind of social aspect of it just wasn't for me. Um, but I persevered, and I done it, and it was fine. And then I went out and got an IT job, and then obviously I then wanted to be an actor, and I also done that, and people often think you need the grades and you need um, to go to drama school and all that. And all mine was really off was persistence. I emailed every casting director I could find in the UK and Ireland until someone emailed me back and said, we've got an audition. I'd done some small plays in Newbury to kind of get some stuff under my belt. I went to college, despite the lack of qualifications, and passed my course. I truly believe everyone's employable. Um, and people sometimes will go, well, what about people who are, you know, really severely, impacted by their condition? But I mean, I know someone that's got locked-in syndrome. He can't move his legs, his arms. You know, he can't move anything. But he's a successful author. He's wrote a
Hmm.
book with his eyes. So um, it's just things like that. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that are really interested in that one subject. Like mine was wrestling. I could easily, I would love to be like a wrestling historian. Put me in a
Hmm.
wrestling museum or whatever. I'd be all over it. So
Hmm.
I really believe there's a job out there for everyone. Everyone is employable, but everyone just needs that bit of help and support. And employers just need to be a bit more understanding of that, because there's so much talent and there's so much potential that they're just going, as you say, no, they've got autism on the CV. No, 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 too much work. When
Hmm.
actually said that those people could bring in those big orders, or could figure out that that thing that's missing that's going to make your
Hmm.
company grow. Um, and just because they don't have like the socialness, or they might have the sensory overload, or they might have, getting up and speaking to people, presenting, or anything, in terms of how their condition impacts them. They are things, as we said, that we can put adjustments in to make that person just really good at their job.
Hmm.
Um, and I think, as you say, going into charity places is a really good first kind of step to get in employment. But I would always suggest to people out there that just because you're conditioned, don't feel like you can't do what you want to do, because you can.
Hmm.
It's people around you that need to change. I never want people to think that it's them that needs to change. There's something wrong with them. People often look for the cure of something instead of actually trying to find out how we can support them. People often
Hmm.
want that fix, that quick fix. What can we do to fix this? And people sometimes look past actually the person and what they've got in front of them, because they're too busy looking at the fix. Or, as we've discussed, people will just disregard them and go, well, they shouldn't really be working here, should they? Well, of course they should. You know, what do you want them to do? Do you want them just to not do anything then? Do you want, you know, it's.
Yeah.
I've, I've spoken with teachers and they've turned around and went, I don't believe in conditions. I just think they're naughty. I've had teachers like that, and it's like, we're working in education. You believe that? It's like, you know, it's as you say,
Yes.
it's an old way of thinking, and it's 2021 now, and people sort of need to get with the times a bit more, and start understanding. So I often see posts on Facebook like, when I was a kid, it wasn't called ADHD, OCD, or autism. It was called, being naughty. It's like, well, sorry, but that's because your
Yeah.
education system was wrong. That's because the mind process was wrong back then. There's
Hmm.
thousands I could think of that people did back then that we don't do now,
Hmm.
because we've evolved. We get
Yeah.
those aren't right anymore. So, yeah, people just need to be understanding, and realize, actually, I go to many, like, when I've gone to jobs, at first I haven't disclosed my conditions. It's only till after because I want them to get to know me. And then I'll say at the end, well, actually, I've got this and this and
Hmm.
that. Sometimes
Yeah.
they're surprised and they think, oh my God, sometimes they're like, oh, okay, you know. But I've been at jobs where I've disclosed it right at the beginning, and I've just seen employees shut off straight away. Don't really, they know it's going to be, in their eyes, too much work, and they just kind of go, no. Um, so, yeah, people need to change their approach, I think.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Some really great points, mate. Honestly, you speak so well about all this stuff, and perfect sense in my eyes, especially with the education. I did spend a small time in special needs schools when I first left school myself. That's something I got into as an LSA, and one of the things you're quite right, yeah, especially towards those last years in FE, I was thinking like, why on earth are we doing French when these guys? We need to be doing life skills. They need like the little things, like just I don't know, going into a shop. How much is this? Like paying for things, change. This was a time when, of course, a bank card wasn't regularly available, but like back then, money was a big thing, and holding money, getting change, and it was like, why are we wasting time doing French history? And all they'd come back is say, well, it's part of the curriculum. This is part of what we have to do. And you just thought, man, there's no like compromise at all. It seemed from the governments and the education authorities to think actually what would benefit these people in the last few years, especially, would be to do some good life skills, tapping into what each individual wants to do, opening up an opportunity, maybe. I mean, the other thing as well is that you get the other side of it, and I used to find it happened a lot. Is people used to wrap people up in cotton wool. They never wanted them to foul, and I used to say, you know what, like if somebody like a good example of this, I was working with a young man. He just was about 19, and he'd always wanted to go to a nightclub. But the care home he was in, they was like, oh, I don't know, if he goes there, it could be dangerous and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, come on. Like, he's 19. He wants to try it. Like, I wanted to try it when I was that age. I was like, he just wants to try it. And they're like, what if it goes wrong, and he doesn't like it? And I'm like, well, he don't go back, does he? He'll know. But I'm like, it's giving that opportunity to foul sometimes isn't a bad thing. Like, it's normal. It's kind of part of the life is that you can't succeed at everything, and failing at things or not enjoying something you think you will, that's just life. But you do get the other side where people can be a little bit too much protective of others, and they don't want to just give that opportunity just in case it goes wrong. And I always think, what, if it goes wrong, it goes wrong. I mean, like most things in life, you or I or whatever, there are always things we're going to do that aren't always going to succeed, and that's just part of everyday living. You try and risk assessment and risk manage as best as you can, but you don't want to shut people off from having those opportunities. I kind of feel, but honestly, mate, everything you've said makes perfect sense. I've got to say, you're an amazing speaker for a lot of these things. I want to make sure people check you out and get you on the show again. Is there anything else you'd like to add just on that front before we just end and talk a little bit about some wrestling, my friend?
Yeah, I think you're right. When I got my job at the housing association, I said to my mum, I said, "Well, you're going to have to take me to work every day." And my mum went, "Well, no. If you want to get at work, you'll get the bus."
Hmm.
Um, at the time, the bus was like the worst idea for me. So I said, "Well, I'm not doing it." And she said, "Well, then you ain't going to be able to work, are you?" Now that might come across really blunt and really horrible to people, but as you say, sometimes tough love isn't a terrible thing. Um, and when I got my first acting gig as an extra on Glue, they were filming up in Lambeth and Lambourne, sorry. And I said to my mum, I said, "Will you take me?" My mum went, "No, you have to get the bus." And she knew because it was something I really wanted to do.
Hmm.
She knew that would slay me. And I always remember the morning. Um, I said, "Right, I'm going now, mum." She said, "Oh, I'll take you if you want." And I said, "No, I need to do this." Sometimes the idea is the thing that scares us. When we do it, it's not so bad as what we thought. But
Hmm.
the more we don't try it, the more we get more afraid of it. Um, and there's no reason why you can't do smaller steps to eliminate that fear. So, for instance, my mum's situation, bless her, she was a bit more like throw him into the deep end straight away. That might not have been the greatest approach. Maybe the better approach would have been, okay, Max, I'll get the bus with you, and little by little eliminate. Okay, you're going to get the bus on your own today, and sort of do it like that. Even the nightclub situation. I mean, there's nothing to say you like. Again, I know it's not exactly the same, but get a room, get some lights, get
Hmm.
some loud music, get some kind of, so you kind of simulate what it would be like. See if
Sure.
they see if they then like it. So there's always kind of workarounds that we can try,
Hmm.
um, and in that way it takes that risk factor away as well. But some people, you're absolutely right. Some people thrive and actually just show how much they can do when they're just put in that zone. Um, Obviously, it's always important for us to know about their safety and their well-being before we do it. But as you say, if you don't try, you never know. And I always say, fail really is the first attempt in learning. So
Yeah.
that's how I think of it. So yeah, I think you're spot on really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know what? You've been on it. I wasn't expecting this interview to go this long. I've got to say, you've really like captured me in all this. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this up into two parts, my friend, because I think I'm going to have you back on and talking more about what you do as well as the wrestling, so we can fit it all in. I don't really want to rush towards the end because I know that there's probably a lot of wrestling stuff to get round as well. But yeah, thank you very much for this part one, my friend. Where can people go at the end of this to find you? I'll put all the links in the description, obviously, but just to tell people, where can they find you and also some of the places that you support and you're an ambassador for?
So if you go to the best kind of place would be my website. So it's just maxjgreen.com.
Right.
You'll find all my social links on there. You can contact me if you just want to chat or you want to inquire about me speaking at another event for anything. Just go onto my contact page, and yeah, then you'll have all my Facebook, my Twitter, my YouTube. If you want to see my weekly videos I do about autism, that's on Maxi Aspie on YouTube.
Yep.
Um, Again, most of it's all on the website. And then if you want to see where I was spoken at, just go on my resume on there, and you'll have my acting resume and my public speaking resume. So yeah, if anyone wants advice or just someone to talk to, feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to talk, as you might know by my constant rambling.
Nah, not at all, not at all. I'm the one for that normally. No, I've been absolutely engaged in everything you've said, my friend, and it's 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 difficult sometimes because I used to work with a guy as well who had a very severe epilepsy, and but he had very good mental capacity as well, and it was always fascinating to be able to talk to him and ask questions I wouldn't normally be able to ask people that I was supporting at the time of learning disability, just because their understanding wasn't there for it, and also they'd often forget what had happened, but he could always remember what was going on in the process of it. And I always was trying to find out like what it felt like, what I could do different when that was happening, and all those other things about the craziness with people panicking would be the worst case scenario, that kind of thing. It was very, very good. And so to speak to someone like yourself, buddy, like that, and sharing some of those things you've overcome has been a real education on my end as well. So I want to thank you for that and sharing that with us as well. But yeah, we'll get you on for part two, my friend. Definitely. For anybody that wants the links, I'll put them in the description below. You can go on there and check out where Max is, and like Max said, go ahead and contact him if you do feel a little bit lonely. You might be somebody out there. I certainly have, or we know we have a huge audience in that area as well that contact me regular. I'm sure Max will give you that support as well out there. So yeah, thank you very much, Max, for your time here. It's been a pleasure, and we'll come back for part two with some wrestling, of course. That's the main aim. But thank you very much.
No, thank you, John.